Hello, Susan McLaughlin from Salem Community Television, and we are out here in front of the Demers house on Martin Avenue. They've come in front of the zoning board many times through the years, and it has been in the paper quite a bit. It started with a spill from Hafner's Oil while they were coming to fill their burner, burst or leaked, and it all flooded into the basement. So it's been an ongoing project for years, and in every family, things. Sometimes tragedy befalls you. So we're going to talk to these people, and hopefully we can turn it into a hopeful story. We'll bring them in. All right, so I am with Mike Demers, who's been living here at 21 Martin Ave after the oil spill, and he's been bouncing around between residences, and today's the day their trailer, their temporary home, is going to be taken out. So it's a big day for you, Michael.
Yes, it is. It's, bittersweet day here today,
But the thing is, you are back in the house, and if it can only get cleaned up, it's a good thing. But you know what? A lot of our viewers probably don't know, even though you've been in the paper and in front of the zoning board for a long time, the timeline of events and what actually happened. So can you take us to the beginning, that first day when you had the oil tank filled?
Yeah, it was back in February '07. Hafner's servicemen came down to fill up our oil tank, 21 Martin Ave here, and I guess my stepdad was here at the time, and he let the oil guy in, or they had called for us, and the oil guy came down and began to fill the tank, and I guess he went back to his truck and wasn't paying attention, and what happened was he ended up overfilling the oil tank and exploding it, and what happened was the sight glass blew off of the oil tank itself, the tank split and ruptured, and the oil was shot out the vent down the side of the foundation over here, and I got a phone call, and I came down about an hour later, and I looked down here, and the fire department was all over here, and I went downstairs for a minute, and there was oil all over the floor. Probably about more than half of the floor was covered with oil.
So now he's got an oil spill in his basement and along the side of the foundation of the house, which, as we all know, oil sticks.
Permeated into the foundation that was impacted. It doesn't go away,
It doesn't go away.
It's like a burnt piece of wood, actually, Basically, you remove it,
Right. So now you've got this oil spill. I'm sure you've immediately called the Hafner headquarters, or the attendant did. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I believe Hafner's personnel called up the DES, New Hampshire and Concord, and we got a call. Like I said, I came down here, and the insurance agent for Hafner's, Katie Insurance Company, I had a representative here, Mr. Wigglesworth from Ambrose Environmental Management, and we were told to get our stuff, pack up, and go to a hotel.
Okay, so probably for your health's sake, it probably was the best move at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And what was the plan of action for cleaning it up?
We were told that Katie Insurance Company had hired Ambrose Environmental Management to manage the site.
Right.
And what happened was they contracted Empro Services in Newburyport, Mass. To conduct the cleanup. Okay. And it went from there.
Okay. So they cleaned up by excavating, what were you telling me, a few feet of soil around the outside?
Initially, yeah, they had excavated a small area around on the south wall over here, on the other side of the breezeway over here. Mm-hmm. And they did some sampling of the area that was impacted around the oil tank. They put some test holes in an area about 10 feet surrounding the oil tank. Mm-hmm. And we were updated by the insurance claim agent there, Mr. Wigglesworth, on what happened, and we were in a hotel waiting for results from sampling.
Okay, now this went on for quite a while, right? You were in that hotel room how long?
28 months, actually.
28 months. Now, what took so long?
Well, what happened was the initial areas that they had tested and declared clean, the sampling, what happened was there was strong odors in there every time we would come into the home, and about little over 3 weeks after the oil spill, the insurance adjuster for Acadia Insurance, Mr. Wigglesworth, said the cleanup was done and ready to move into the home. And we said we couldn't possibly be ready to move into the home because the oil was so strong in the home at the time. Right. So what happened was we ended up calling up our insurance agent at some point, and we requested that they come down and take a look at what they've done at the property here. And what happened is I believe it was probably a month or two after the spill, a guy came in here from our insurance carrier and tested the air in the home, and there was high alerts all in the area where they had tested and said was clean to a state standard level. Yeah, state standard in New Hampshire level is quite different than Massachusetts level. In the state of New Hampshire, they live like, I believe it's about 50 times the amount of contaminants that leave in the soil, I was told. And over here, we're on a wetland over here. We had a serious concern from the get-go of making sure that this cleanup was done in a timely fashion. And
yeah, you've got that creek or that brook running behind you. Is that part of the Spigot River, do you know?
I believe it is. I believe it is. Yeah, it does eventually run into it. Down in Lawrence, I believe it heads down that way.
So just to set the stage for the people at home, I came here the day before this shoot just to talk to him, do a little pre-interview, and that day was kind of wet and drizzly and rainy, and the odor was much, much stronger than today. Today it's a drier day. I don't know if maybe it doesn't activate the scent, the oil doesn't rise and lay on top of the oil, but I will say it is a very different circumstance depending on the day and the weather.
Absolutely. I was told by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services a long time ago that humidity, rain, atmospheric conditions have an absolute effect. We just had a 2-day rainstorm prior to this, and I had my plumber down here last night disconnecting the water to the trailer over here, and he couldn't bear the smell.
Exactly. It really, seriously, it is night and day. It is very different between yesterday and today. But still, I mean, the weather is crazy in New England, and you're going to get those days. Now, it didn't end there. Now, while you're in the hotel room, you had another sort of a tragedy befell. What happened while you're in the hotel room?
Well, nearly a year after the oil spill, the contractors found the largest amount of oil contamination on the property here, the Demers residence here, and right around that time, there was a problem with the heating system because they had a temporary drum out in the backyard over here, and what happened was the rainwater kept getting in, and it kept shutting off. So they were told numerous times that, you should put an oil tank out there, and or do something about it so that this furnace doesn't keep shutting off. Sure enough, after they had to start this furnace over half a dozen times, the furnace must have shut off while we were in a hotel. We came back on a work date that there was probably about a year and 2 days after this, and all of a sudden we noticed water in the basement. And
so now his pipes froze and burst. So now you have another issue. You've got water all over the basement, although I do understand you did get some help, right? A few cleaners came in. Who came in to help clean up?
Well, the responsible parties hired contractors. Empro Services contracted Serpro, and they came in and began to remediate the water damage. And there was quite a bit of water damage there.
Yeah. Well, and the scary part of water damage is mold. Now, do you think you experienced any mold after that?
There was mold before that. These contractors were here for so long at the property, and they kept the house closed up. So from February when the oil spill happened in 2006, and throughout the summer that this supposed cleanup was going on here, the humidity, they kept the house. We were in a hotel. They were in charge of the home. The house windows, they didn't put any dehumidifiers or anything. Was not running. The house was closed up.
The mold started creeping in.
Mold started creeping in at that point. After the water damage, again, and this was over a year later, they cleaned it, but they didn't remove all the drywall and the studs or the insulation in the home. And not only that, this home should have been packed up immediately after this oil spill. They packed up this home a year after this oil spill when the water damage occurred, and what happened was by then all the furniture was permeated with the oil smell in the home. So all the stuff over a year after the oil spill was finally packed up.
Yeah, well, Well, as hard as it is to see your stuff go into storage like that, it's more livable because you're not smelling that constantly.
Oh, absolutely. But like I said, the way they left this home after the oil spill, they never gutted the basement out. There was mold damage. They left her without an oil tank.
Right.
They left her foundation with leaks and cracks. All the ceilings in the walls in the home have cracked because of the multiple excavations in the property here, and they spent over $400,000.
Did go to court with your lawyer, and I think most people would probably feel like I would like to have some remediation here. And what did you get from them? Did you get anything?
No, absolutely nothing. There was 4 companies involved: the Hafner's Service Station, Lawrence, Mass; Katie Insurance Company, Bedford, New Hampshire; Empro Services, Newburyport, Massachusetts; and Ambrose Environmental Management, Danvers, Mass. We took these 4 companies to court, and some reason we lost our case. We had ample evidence to suggest that there was negligence going on here, and they had all the money in the world for all their experts. They're big corporations. We had Mom, myself, and 1 lawyer.
And how was your lawyer?
Our lawyer did the best he could. I mean, this is a large case. This was a lot of things that happened on here, and it was all documented. And we couldn't submit certain evidence. Wasn't allowed. We weren't able to tell the court or the jurors that we got really sick. My poor mom.
Yeah, so one thing I did notice yesterday when I came here, your mom has a terrible hacking cough. She's got some bronchial issues, and I understand your stepfather's got pneumonia.
Yeah, since we moved into the home recently, they both gotten sick. And I don't feel comfortable in the home. I sleep with my window open and a fan in the window right now. I go into the kitchen on some days. I get immediately dizzy from the odors, the noxious odors that are still in there. Like on a day like yesterday, there's a problem here.
Yeah,
And
there is a problem. So at one point, I understand Hafner did say, we'll give you a new tank. Did you get that?
I'm sorry. After the oil spill, and they tried to move us into the home 3 weeks after the spill, and we complained of noxious odors that were making us sick. Hafner's had dropped off a brand new oil tank to our home and put it into the basement. And the insurance adjuster at the time, Mr. Wigglesworth from Ambrose Environmental Management, he said, we're ready to move you in. We're all set here. And I complained because my mother was getting really sick and I was getting sick myself walking into the home. And they said that the property is basically clean. And it was documented, letters sent to the DES. They're ready to seal up the floor and hook up this oil tank. And I said, there's no way you can put this oil tank right in here right now because of the odors were so extreme at the time. And that was the point when I ended up calling my insurance agent and saying, could you please get an independent tester in here to test around and find these odors that were coming around the chimney and in the family room from the basement down here. They After about 3-4 months, after our expert came in, the expert determined that there was more work needed to be done. And this information was passed on, and they came back, and in May, 4 months after the oil spill, our expert discovered a high alert on the same area that they had declared clean to the state of New Hampshire. So what happened was that they started digging some more out. At that same time period, Hafner's wrote my mother a letter, sort of blaming partially the fault on her.
No, what was that reasoning? What did they say was?
Well, Hafner's basically said in his letter that you're aware that you had a faulty oil tank and faulty piping at the home, and said to my mother that you're making a big deal out of this, and it's 4 months after the spill. And I sent him a letter back and sort of corrected the facts and told him how we felt over here and who was at fault, which we believe they were entirely at fault for this. And they came back and they had their personnel come to the property shortly afterwards, and they took back the brand new oil tank. They were ready to hook up. And
how are you heating your house now?
Right now, we just got the heating system repaired over the last couple months. We put an exterior oil tank into the home. It's in the rear of the yard over here, and we put a new oil line in.
Okay.
And then once we had the heat going, now we could find the leaks in the pipes that they left broken, and we could demolition the property and get the mold out that was in there, because there were high amounts of mold in the entire home just prior to us moving in here.
Right. And I do see you have a good ventilation system out back, so that's sucking up the odors from the basement, correct?
Well, I just installed a temporary soil vapor extraction system that the state of New Hampshire recommended be in this home. I just installed that a couple weeks ago, and what happened is that now the vapors, before I put that in, this whole entire home and basement would fill up with the oil fumes. So right now they're exhausting them out of the home, but there are still odors, as in last night and in last week. I had several contractors here when it was a bad day.
Yeah, I'm sure. Right. So it's very weather dependent. But at least I felt like yesterday I said nobody could sleep in there. It smelled so bad, but it's not like that every day. Today is okay.
Was better. But to me, when I got up this morning and I went into the kitchen, I after about a minute, I get dizzy, because there's an area where there was an addition put on, and no sampling was done below that because they couldn't access it. And for all I know, we don't know what is under this property right now still.
Okay, so we wish you the best of luck. I mean, in a way, it's half sad to see the trailer go, because I felt like that was almost like a safe haven in case anybody didn't.
Certainly was, and we want to thank Pope Housing
yes,
with all our heart for putting a roof over our heads for the last 4 years, and when nobody else would from the other side there.
There's really a lot of good people out there. So that's okay, so we are now inside the trailer, which has been the Demers home for 4 years, and at least it was a place to be for 4 years, right? And I'm with the mother of the home, or the woman, Suzanne Demers. Hello, Suzanne.
Hi, how are you?
So was it okay living here for 4 years?
Well, it was a roof over our head. It was clean. There was no oil spill.
Right.
There was no oil smell. And it just was hard living in a trailer, knowing 15 feet away was my home.
Right. Now, I know there's probably laws, town variance laws that says you can't live in front of your real house for an unlimited amount of time. So you had to go in front of the zoning board many times, correct?
Yes, we did. And we were thankful we were granted extensions, more variances, and I'm glad to go back in. I just want my house back to normal, which it is not.
No, it is not yet. Now, yesterday when you and I spoke, I felt very bad for you because you felt like there was no end in sight. But do you feel a little better today? Because your son was telling me you do have something of a plan to make your house more livable.
Yes, we do. We're hoping to raise some money and to get the foundation redone, because it's embedded in the foundation. Put a vapor barrier down so that there would be no more smell, and be back to normal. That's so important.
No, it's very important. You have to get back in a little steady, not in a constant state of chaos. Which is what it's been. You were in the hotel room, then you were in the trailer, and now you're back in the house. It has to settle, right?
Exactly. But 7 years is a long time.
It's time for it to end.
Absolutely.
So was it in a way when you left, when this is leaving now today, hopefully, did it feel like you're making a step in another direction?
I am definitely making a step in a different direction, and hopefully everything will come to pass, that everything will be back to where it's supposed to be.
Okay. Now, yesterday, again, Suzanne, I don't know if you had just gone on medication, but you were coughing terrible. I could hear it in the bronchial, and you're on some medication now. You're feeling a little better?
A little bit better, yeah. But I mean, it does. It gives you headaches. It doesn't, you don't feel right. You don't feel right. It needs to be corrected. Right. People need to understand that. Right. I don't think they really do.
No, it's right. It has to be resolved somehow.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But you know what I know about this town? They do come together for people in need, and you did already see that once with Pope for helping you with this.
Oh my God, I can't thank Pope enough.
Right.
I can't.
They helped you.
They did.
Yeah, they helped you when you really needed it. And I believe there are other people in this town that can do that too, in different ways with their own specific talents.
Right. I'm hoping for that.
Right, me too.
If you want to put a team together, and if you're interested, you can contact us at 1-603-912-5269, or you can email me at Michael, michael.92@gmail.com. Let's put it together. And
So we're going to wrap this up today. You have a feeling of what these people have been living with. It's been a tough road for them. Once that oil had spilled over in the back of the house here, this is where we are in the back of the house, that oil was laying on top of the groundwater and over the soil for a year. And they're 30 feet from the river here, or the brook, whatever this body of water is behind me. And for a year. So it's been permeating through their house, and it does reek at different times of the day, at different times of the weather. So help Mom get home. Maybe you can help them out. Anybody in town who has talents that could help them, they can give them a call. So for Salem Community TV, I'm Susan McLaughlin. Thank you for watching.
Hi, I'm Brian Lockhart. I'm the health officer for the town of Salem, and I'm just here to discuss my involvement regarding the issue at 21 Martin Avenue. As you may or may not be aware, they unfortunately had an oil spill. I believe it was back in 2007. Made the house uninhabitable. Released, I'm not sure quite how much, but hundreds of gallons of fuel oil into the basement. As a health officer, I didn't have any direct involvement. Those type of situations come under the authority of the state, the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. They get involved immediately. They oversee the response measures, and that includes, finding out what happened, what kind of cleanup is necessary. They review all those reports to make sure that it's done properly and that it meets state standards for cleanup, as well as allow, reoccupancy of the home. I did have some involvement based on the request of the occupants. They had many concerns with how the property was cleaned up, how it was being handled, whether it was meeting state standards or even just safe standards for living. So just as the local health officer, I had gone by several times just to do sort of what I call a cursory inspection, just kind of a walkthrough to see what was going on, if there was any odors, if there was any issues, anything I could get involved in. The first time I went by was early in the process. It was back in, let's see, I'm just checking my notes. It was in March of 2007. And there was a strong petroleum odor in the home, and I could understand the concerns by the occupants. It certainly was not livable at that time. I went back again in 2008. It still was not, well, I shouldn't say cleaned up satisfactorily, but there was still an issue. There was still a strong petroleum odor in the home. And I know the occupants, again, were very, very concerned, and rightfully so. Unfortunately, it was a long process. I went back again in 2009. At that time, I didn't notice an odor of petroleum within the home, although there was a strong odor of mold, and there was some mold growth in the basement, most likely due to the house not being occupied for several years, being closed up, just being probably too tight as far as holding moisture, so mold became an issue. I didn't go back again until 2013, this past year, which just really indicates how long of a process it was, unfortunately. I didn't smell any petroleum odors, which was good, but they still seemed to have a mold issue. And again, I think it was made worse because the heating system had been off. I believe they had some frozen pipes, and they had some water damage, which all attributed to the mold problem. The state issued what they call a certificate of no further action back in 2012. So they were saying by state standards it had been cleaned up. They were looking mostly at the petroleum issues. They weren't looking at the mold. But according to their standards, it had been cleaned up. And I didn't notice any petroleum odors after 2009. So by 2012, when the state said it was cleaned up, I don't think the petroleum odors was such a big factor. However, now they had a mold issue. And I think that they're working on that now to comply with the town standards as far as zoning issues with the home and the mobile home, is to get that mold remediated so they can get in. Other than that, I think we're just hoping that for the best for them, that they can get that issue resolved and make it habitable for them again. That would be helpful. Usually what they install is some type of vapor barrier. So, I mean, it could be as simple as plastic, or it could be plastic with an additional concrete slab. And you're right, with these types of spills, it's very, very difficult to remove all that petroleum product, because, you can just imagine when your heating tank lets go and all those gallons of heating fuel release and get down in between the cracks and underneath the slab. Unless you actually remove that original slab and excavate the soil, it's tough to get it all. I mean, they have these modern techniques now to get in there and to remove it and to vaporize it. But you can have instances where the water table rises, it can encounter that some oil, residual oil in the soil, and you can get those odors again. So, right, so some type of vapor barrier. And you can see it in situations like for radon remediation, that they'll put a vapor barrier, and sometimes they'll even have some type of air pump, so they'll create negative pressure to kind of draw those vapors away from the home rather than allow them to enter. So to be 100% sure that they've corrected those vapors, some type of vapor barrier probably is necessary. In another community I worked at before I came here to Salem, very similar situation where they had a large release of heating fuel in the basement. And what they did in that situation was they actually brought in a couple of large steel beams and raised the entire house up off the foundation, removed the existing foundation and the slab, excavated all the soil, all that contaminated soil, and then replaced it with clean soil, compacted it, built a new foundation, and lowered the house down. So it seemed that was really the best way. It seems very expensive and difficult, but it can be done. And I know they spent, I think, hundreds of thousands of dollars already on this cleanup here. But in that other situation, they were able to just remove all the contaminated soil, the foundation, build a new one, and then save the house and put the house back down on it and reattach it. And they did, studies and air monitoring afterwards, and it seemed to work. So there's various ways to do it. It seemed pretty drastic, but they were able, it was a success.